What's up, guys? KS here. Thanks for joining me today as always. You guys know I'm a big fan of 1911s. I've been shooting them since I was a little kid, along with the 45 ACP or 230 grain hardball. I absolutely love them. I've got a special place in my heart for them. But things have changed since the early 1900s. First, manufacturers have started bringing in different calibers to the 1911 format, such as 9mm, so it makes it a little bit less expensive to shoot, which is kind of nice, and to some degree a little bit easier because these guns can be pretty heavy and they're shooting a lighter round in them, so they can be a lot of fun and incredibly accurate guns as well. But then also the features and tolerances have changed and come a long way since those early days. So I'm excited to bring to you guys today the Rock Island Armory 22 TCM. It's part of their TCM lineup. It's actually the Tac Ultra Fs, and this is in 22 TCM and 9mm. It's actually a combo. So when you buy a gun like this, you're actually going to get a couple of different barrels and springs to go along with it for those two different calibers, which is actually a pretty cool idea. Now, to be transparent with you guys, Rock Island was nice enough to send this along for my review to provide my thoughts to you guys, so a special shout out to them. I really appreciate the opportunity. Of course, I get no kickbacks for this, and I get to say whatever I want to say, so that's kind of an arrangement I make anytime I do something like this. So hopefully it'll be very honest with you guys. There's a lot to love about it, and there's some quirks as well. Now, Arms Corps was also nice enough to send some ammo along as well, just to have a little bit of fun and make some noise, and I will tell you, noise I did make. So more on that in a little while, and guys, let's dive deep into this thing. All right, let's go ahead and knock some specs of this guy out of the way. The length is 8.75 inches. The height is 5.5 inches. The barrel length is 5 inches. This is a standard government model. The width, and I'll give you a good look at that, of course, it's going to be 1.4 inches. The magazine capacity on this is actually 10 rounds. Now, I will say that the gun only came with one magazine out of the box. I did have Rock Island Armory send me another magazine just for testing, but just to be aware, there's one magazine in the box. Now, the magazine will take both the 9mm and the 22 TCM, so you don't have to worry about immediately running out and buying another magazine. But one thing I would like Rock Island to do is throw in two magazines. I think that would be bare minimum for any gun you buy. That's just my opinion on that, but I believe that to be true. Now, this does have a parkerized coating. It's very similar to a lot of GI models that are out there, and that's the same on both the slide and the frame. But I like it. I think it's just fine. I mean, it's not terribly exciting in terms of being over the top or anything like that, but it definitely gets the job done, and it doesn't have a lot of glare to it, so it's a bit of a matte finish, which I much prefer. So I actually really like this. I think it is very tastefully done, and the Rock Island Armory logo right here, they've actually moved it. It used to be on the side. It was much bigger, but now it's right here, and this is fine. This is great. Doesn't bother me one bit, and it stays out of the way, but it's actually a nice looking logo as well, so I kind of like that. Now, I mentioned earlier this is a 1911, so of course it's going to be single action only, so if you were to carry it or use it, whatever it happens to be, you would probably do cocked and locked like this with the hammer down and the safety on, and it does have, of course, the manual thumb safety. It's pretty good pretty good size safety right there, and it is ambidextrous, the exact same size on the other side. It proved to actually be a really nice platform. When I run 1911s, I do try and use the safety as a little bit of a rest, because then I can actuate it as needed, and I will say that it's positive, but it's not so stiff that you can't use it. So they did a really good job with that. So that's your specs right there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the features. All right, there is a lot going on with the 22 TCM. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the magazine here for just a moment or two. There's a lot to show you, and actually for the money, it's pretty feature rich. So we'll take a look at the grips first. These are G10 grips. They're actually really nice. I like the fact that they've got a cutout here so you can get to the magazine release a little bit easier, but I think they're really nice. Give you a little bit of a close-up right there. I mean, they did a good job. They're sharp. They're not too loud, but it's nice because they're standard size grips. So if you want to change them out, do different colors, different textures, you can definitely do that. Now, another really cool thing, and this is a great attention to detail. Anytime a manufacturer does this, I love it. They've actually got a mag well in here. So it's a little bit easier to load magazines in because there's a little bit of a bevel on three sides. And I think that's a nice attention to detail. I think that really goes to the value of this firearm. Now, the mainspring housing does have a really nice texture on it as well. Let's see if the camera can pick that up. There it is right there. So it's a really nice texture. Now, on the front side a little bit different. These are actually going to be some vertical lines, so it doesn't have quite as much bite on the front side, although there are a lot of 1911s out there that don't have any sort of a texture at all. So the fact that they took the time to mill some texture into this is actually really nice. And during shooting, the gun stayed very planted. I mean, I love 1911s anyways. I've spent a fair amount of time over the years with them, so they're at least a little bit natural to me, but the fact that you get a pretty good grip out of the box is really nice. So I'll go ahead and throw that magazine back in. Now, as we move up, you'll see there's a pretty good sized beaver tail right here. And then, of course, we've got our memory bump right here on the grip safety, which is nice. So they did a good job with that. I mean, it just, it counts towards being able to really ride up very high on it. It's very comfortable and it stays out of the way. Not a big deal at all. So good job with that on Rock Island. And then, of course, we've got our magazine right here, magazine release rather. And just, you know, it's pretty plain Jane, what you would expect. It is not ambidextrous out of the box. So just on the one side there. And then, of course, we've got our slide lock slide release. It works quite well, not a big deal. And of course, I won't take that slide down with that release. I never do on 1911s, just a thing with me. But again, it works quite well, not a problem. And of course, that doubles as your takedown lever as well. Now, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to take this down the video. I will tell you 1911s are a pain to take down on video. You guys remember there's a camera right here, so that always becomes a little bit of a struggle for me. So we'll see. I might talk myself into it. You never know. Now, it does have an accessory rail for chainsaws, lasers, tiny grenades, things like that. Tiny grenades. Now, that would be interesting. So you've got a bunch of grenades all hanging there. You can throw them off one at a time, which is pretty cool. But again, in terms of the frame, there's a lot going on here. A lot of nice features and everything looks really good. Now, the trigger is skeletonized, and you'll notice that it actually is adjustable for over travel, which is also a really good attention to detail. Again, going towards just throwing as many options into this as possible and making that value just a little bit better. All right, let's take a look at the slide for just a moment or two. You guys will notice right off the bat, we've got some front serrations right here, and I like these serrations. I mean, they've got a lot of bite to them. They work really well. And then we've got rear serrations. They match the front. So I think it's a really tasteful gun. And it actually is kind of an aggressive looking gun as well. So it's a little bit more combat oriented. I like it. I think it's really nice. Now it does have the TCM on the other side, as you can see right here. But again, otherwise it's just very tasteful. It's not too loud. It doesn't attract entirely too much attention unless, of course, you throw some different grips or something like that on there. And then in terms of the sight, we've got a couple of things going on. It is a fiber optic front sight. Give you a good look at that. Now, when it came to me, it had a red fiber optic. I actually changed it out for the green for a couple of reasons. The red was pretty dirty. This is a T&E gun. I think it's been in some other people's hands, not just mine. So it was kind of time to switch that out. And then I prefer green as well. So I just went ahead and took the liberty. They can change it out again when they get it back. That's perfectly fine by me. But then we've got our rear sight right here, and it is actually adjustable, fully adjustable for windage and elevation. And I will give you a good look at that sight picture. Now, there are white dots on the rear sight. I would prefer blacked out for something like this, but that's not a big deal. Worst case scenario, you run with these sights and you can paint those dots with a Sharpie or something like that. But otherwise, I like the sight picture. The fiber optic picked up really well at the range, and it was easy to run this gun pretty quickly. So again, in terms of features, everything that they've put on this gun, I think they did a great job. They put about as much as they possibly could on this gun for the money, and I think that's really important, especially when you're considering what type of firearm to buy. Now, one thing I haven't really talked about just yet are the barrels. Now, I mentioned that the gun comes with two barrels, and right now in it is the 22 TCM barrel. And you'll see it's almost kind of a bull barrel, and they did that because the end of the barrel, of course, has to fit in where the bushing is and all that, just to make it a little bit more accurate and stable and all of that. But it actually did quite well. Now, I'll be talking about the shooting experience here in just a little while, but along with your 22 TCM barrel and a very light spring, you guys will notice, and I haven't really done this too many times for you, but racking the slide is insanely easy. It is so light. I mean, just about anybody could rack the slide on this thing, which is pretty cool. But it did also come with another barrel and spring. I just left them in the bag right here. I want to make sure that I didn't lose anything. But you can expect, again, to get a 9mm barrel, and you just want to make sure when you're swapping it out, and it's a standard 1911 takedown, you just want to make sure you're using the right spring. So again, keeping them together is probably a really good idea. And this is a heavier spring, obviously, for the 9mm. So just something to be aware of. In terms of shooting, this was a very interesting gun to take to the range, and I will say I had no idea what I was getting into. Now, with the 9mm, I definitely did. I've shot 9mm 1911s before. You guys know I absolutely love them, so it doesn't take very long for me to not only warm up to them, but also to kind of fall in love with them, and that's the same with this. Shooting the 9mm out of this gun was fantastic. It was very accurate. It was very easy to shoot. The grips felt fantastic. The sights did their job. I had no bobbles whatsoever. I put about 150 rounds of 9mm through this on the range day, and it was just a lot of fun. But that's not really why I was there. That wasn't the big excitement. I wanted to get a feel, of course, for the 911 or the 9mm rather, but it really was all about the 22 TCM. And you guys are probably wondering, what is a TCM? So I want to show you this. I'm probably interrupting my shooting footage here for just a moment or two, because, and we'll get a 9mm out here for a moment as well. So we've got our 9mm on your right, and we've got the 22 TCM on the left. So basically the 22 TCM is kind of a necked down 9mm. I think I'm saying that right. So it's almost, the bullet basically is almost the size of a 22, or maybe is the size of a 22. It's probably why they call it that. I'm not a ballistics expert, just so you guys know. But there's a lot of powder in there, and there's a lot of pressure in there. From what I understand, when you have neck down rounds like the 22 TCM, or maybe a 357 SIG or something like that, you're gonna get a little bit more pressure in this, and pressure it does have for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the shooting experience with the 22 TCM. Again, I said I wasn't quite sure what I was going to expect at the range, so when I started shooting it right off the bat, I noticed something very phenomenal, I guess I'll say, about it. This thing, guys, is loud. This is a loud gun. It absolutely grabs the attention of the people at the range. There is no doubt about it. So when I started shooting this, there were definitely people peeking around the corner. Hey, KS, what are you doing? They thought I was shooting a rifle, and they got a little concerned because you guys know I'm not really much of a rifle guy. But they noticed that I was shooting this this 1911, and that's pretty much it. So I got to talk to some of those guys about the 22 TCM, and it was a lot of fun. The recoil is very slight. There's not much to it. I'd say there's more recoil than a regular 22, no doubt about it, because again, there's more pressure coming back. However, there is probably about 30%, 35% as much recoil as there is in a 9mm. Now, as I'm shooting, and the gun is incredibly accurate. It was an accurate gun. I had a great time shooting it, but my mind was playing tricks on me a little bit, because I kept expecting there to be more recoil and there to be more there. So my hands were kind of trying to compensate for something that really wasn't happening. So it was a little bit funny to go back and to watch some of the shooting footage. But as I pulled the targets back every time, the targets were great. Now, I'm not a bullseye shooter. You guys know that. I don't advertise to be, don't necessarily care to be anymore. That's not my deal. I'm a defensive shooter. And if this was to be a defensive gun, it would absolutely put rounds on target, no doubt about it. You'd probably go deaf in the process. So would everybody else around you, because it's really loud, but it is extremely accurate. So just a lot of fun. I'll be trying to wheel in as much of that shooting footage as I possibly can for you. Okay, there's one other rule I'm going to break in this video. You guys know I do not like doing this. I don't keep my targets. Typically, it's not a thing with me, but I thought it was important to keep a couple of these targets here. So I'm just gonna show you for a moment or two. That's 9mm. That's probably some of the footage that you're seeing on here. And it was great. I think I shot it at 7 yards, maybe. I mean, nothing special or anything like that, but it performed just fine. And for my standards, this is decent shooting. So I had a really good time with it. But then to give you a little bit of a comparison with the 22 TCM, and those of you who shoot 22s from time to time, you're probably familiar with this, but if you don't very often, there is a distinct difference in the size of the bullet right here. And I thought it was so funny when I would be pulling those targets back and be like, God, did I hit it at all? And it would take a minute for me to see these little holes in here. So just thought it was kind of funny to illustrate the point of the differences between the two rounds, both of which coming out of one gun. All right, so let's take just a moment or two and take a look at the trigger. We won't spend a lot of time on this one, but it does have a very good trigger. And as I mentioned before, it is adjustable for over travel, which is really nice. But just so you know what you're getting into, if you want to look into a gun like this, there's your take up right there. Hardly anything there. Pretty standard for a 1911. And then you get a nice wall, and there's your break. It's very light. It's very crisp. It's coming in just under 4 pounds on the scale, which is fantastic. I know there are 1911s that are much lighter than that, especially when you start kind of dialing them in and tweaking them and that sort of thing. But out of the box, that's really good. Now your reset, there's your reset right there. I want to get my finger out of the way and do that again. So there's your take up. There's your break, very light, very crisp. It's a very nice trigger. And then your reset right there. It's kind of a slight reset. You can definitely feel it, but it's not very audible, but it's just fine. So out of the box, and I have done no adjusting with this. I haven't spent enough time to really warrant doing that. Out of the box, it was fine. It did exactly what I wanted it to do. It was very predictable. It was very comfortable, light, crisp, all the things you would want out of that. So that, once again, to me, goes to the overall value of the gun. When out of the box, you really don't have to do any sort of tweaking with the trigger unless it's just something that's really important to you. So guys, what do I think of the Rock Island Armory 22 TCM 9mm overall? Guys, I think it's a great gun. It's a lot of fun, and it's practical in one part and perhaps not very practical in the other. First, it shoots 9mm. 9mm is plentiful. It's not very expensive, so you can go to the range and you can spend all day with this. And then on occasion, you can shoot 22 TCM. And why do I say on occasion? Well, the ammo's not quite as prevalent, it's a little harder to find, and it's a little bit more expensive as well. So, you'll be looking at spending more like 45 type prices with that. And there are other ammos that are that cost as well. So, it's just whatever is important to you. But it's nice to be able to have that flexibility, and the 22 TCM is just an incredible experience. I mean, it's loud, but it's easy to shoot. It's a lot of fun. It's definitely a conversation starter, if nothing else. But then there's the value. You're getting a lot for the money with this. Now, it comes in just under $900 MSRP, so your street price is most likely going to be a little bit lower than that. A couple of things to consider, though. It only comes with one magazine. That's a little bit of a ding I would have to give it. I would prefer it come with at least two, but ideally 3 or 4 would be kind of nice. That said, you can get 9mm magazines that would fit in this for not a whole lot of money, so it's not that big of a deal. And then also 22 TCM, although a lot of fun and loud and all those kind of things, I did have a couple of light primer strikes. Now, that was early on in the shooting, but I did have a couple. Not a big deal. I put them back in the gun. They were able to shoot, so it wasn't anything other than light primer strikes, but just something to be aware of course. But overall, you know what? I think it's a great gun. I think the build quality is just fine. I think there are a lot of great features, a lot to be proud of with this gun, and it's a lot of fun. It's very accurate, and it would definitely be something that I would be interested in for sure. So guys, I'm looking forward to what you have to say about this. If you've got some experience with Rock Island Armory or the 22 TCM or any of their other products, I'm always looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about that and your experiences, of course. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.